Okay, we're gonna go into saving $10,000 as quickly as possible. We're gonna give you three specific scenarios. And one of the big factors around how my wife and I got to the point where we could be valued over $1 million by the age of 40, and then by the age of 41 being valued over $5 million, is that we looked at the basic principle of income versus expenses, okay? And if we can understand that we gotta have higher income than expenses, then over a long period of time, we can chip away at specific benchmarks. And one of those big factors then is establishing those benchmarks. And in this case, it's 10,000 bucks, okay? So if we can establish these benchmarks and we can understand and learn the specific intricacies around saving that money, and that's what we've done in the previous two videos in this series, is that we've tried to look at what are the lessons around fixed costs, variable costs, savings, all of these different things that you can do to work towards that $10,000. And so we ended up laying out specific principles and specific budgeting themes that were pretty easy to follow through with. Okay, and I actually have some of these here. And when you're looking at if you're making between $60,000 and $80,000, okay, that ends up making things a lot easier to just simplify what's a low plan of attack, what's a moderate level plan of attack, what's a very, very high intense level of attack to get to that $10,000 as fast as possible. And when you're looking at this, and in our specific case, my wife was no longer working. She was a teacher. We had our second child. We got to this point where like, okay, now let's try to figure out like a specific way that we can save money as quickly as we possibly can. Okay, and so we could look at this, and we were on one specific income at the time. And so when we look through and we're looking at fixed expenses, okay, now we're looking at things like mortgage, okay, car payment, insurance, and utilities. Now, insurance and utilities, those are gonna vary depending upon where you're at, right? How many kids do you have? Do you not have kids? Anything along those lines. And then we're looking at the specific things around car payments or around owning a car. Okay, in a previous video, I had mentioned how we had this thought process that let's push our vehicles to the point of having 300,000 combined miles. And if we could do that, we knew that we could lower our monthly expenses, our fixed expense around our cars, and we could save money faster. Okay, and then the next thing was that when we bought our home, okay, we bought it in a very unique scenario. We found a property that was 25 acres, and we talked to the people who were trying to sell this property, and it was very, very unique, okay? They had 3 people who owned the property because it was in a trust. Parents died, 3 children had the property. One individual wanted to stay on the property and live there. Okay, so you have to jump through a couple legal things for this to happen. You have to figure out, can you do this? So we could buy this property at 2/3 of the cost, so at a 33% discount. And so each and every way, okay, we made some interesting decisions to try and save that as quickly as possible. So this was our fixed rate of looking at this. And so when we're thinking through the lens of what's the easy way, what's the highway, we're going to be looking at, if we're trying to save that money as quickly as possible, we're probably going to be looking closer to about 1,500 bucks saved a month, okay, which is going to be pretty serious. If we're looking at sort of like the standard way, it's going to be about $1,000 a month, so it's going to take us 10 months, right? If we're looking at a little bit slower, 500 bucks a month that we're going to try and get towards that $10,000. So looking at this, we can say we've got a mortgage or a rental aspect. Okay, so let's try to keep that around somewhere around $900 to $1,000 or 900 to 1,200 bucks a month. Okay, and that's looking at if we're making 60 to 80,000 bucks. So now we're looking at this, we're saying 900 to 1,200 bucks a month. That's a goal. If we can keep in that range, we can save that money. Okay, the next thing, looking at the car payment, 300 bucks on the slow end, 250 to 200 bucks on the faster end to get to that. Okay, that's your specific number that you want to work towards. You genuinely want to get towards, if I can have 250 to 300 bucks or lower. Okay, stay below that. That means you've got to be frugal with your vehicle. You've got to be cheap with your vehicle. You don't want to buy something that's just super fancy. You want to be practical. Stay practical with this, okay? Now the next thing, when we're looking at something like insurance and utilities, we're looking around 150 to for utilities to $200, and for both of these, okay? We're looking at insurance and we're looking at utilities. That's the middle of the road, 150 to $200. Okay, if you want to get really, really aggressive with it, you can decrease this. And I'm going to share this story here. Is that one thing that we did is that we had a window unit for an air conditioner in our home. And when we had this unique deal to purchase our house at a 33% discount, it's a 900 square foot house. So we made this decision. We were going to keep our mortgage at, our mortgage was under $500 a month. We want to keep it as low as we possibly can. And then we're gonna only air condition it with a window unit. We're gonna turn that off when we're gone. When we come home, we're gonna turn it on if it gets really, really hot. Okay, if it's below 83 degrees, we're not turning it on. And with the heat, that's another big factor, is that we looked at the heat aspect and we said, okay, we live in the woods, let's get a wood stove. It's gonna be about $1,200 up front. Let's get the wood stove and try to save on oil. In the first year, we got back the expense on the wood stove plus some by saving money off of oil by heating our house with a wood stove. Now, this is something that is not available to everybody, but that's something that we did. These are decisions that we made along the way. Now, when we start to look at variable costs, okay, this is where things get interesting, because now you're looking at groceries, you're looking at dining out, you're looking at entertainment, you're looking at things like, I would even argue gas and travel. Okay, so that's where you're going to see a pretty substantial impact here, is that now if we're looking at groceries and we say to get to $10,000, you can only spend $250 to $300 a month on groceries. If you say $300 a month, now every time that you travel or you go towards the grocery store, you're going to say like $300 a month. I want to spend money on whole foods. I want to buy the cheapest whole foods possible. I want to buy apples. I want to buy bananas. I want to buy pears. I want to buy peaches. I want to buy, chicken, whatever. Now we're looking at this, and you can spend $300 on really, really healthy food and not buy any junk. Like, it's possible. And what's interesting here is that you'll actually end up losing weight. And you say to yourself, okay, you got $300 that we're going to spend on groceries, and then I've got another $50 to $100 that I want to spend on dining out. This is where the challenge comes in. Now you say, okay, one of the variable costs is eating out. I have been eating out about $150 to $200 a month. What if we decrease that? What if we're trying to save $10,000? Let's lower this. Let's go 3 months without eating out. 3 months. We get rice at home, we get beans, we get fruits, we get vegetables, we get chicken, we get beef, we got a grill, we got eggs, and we focus on super nutritious foods without eating out. And we want to get creative. We want to get to that $10,000 as quickly as possible. So now we take out that dining out because we want to go 3 months like cold turkey. Okay. The next thing, entertainment. The next aspect here, this is interesting, okay, is that if we're looking at entertainment and we're spending, $100 a month, we're going out drinking twice a month or something like that, let's back it down to 50, or let's back it down to $25 a month. Maybe you go to the movies once, okay? Maybe you find one thing every 2 to 3 months now, and you save, and you look at that and say, okay, let's only have entertainment, every 2 to 3 months. It's $50 that we can spend. Now you end up saving another $150, $200 every 2 months. That goes into your savings that you're working towards to get to those $10,000. Okay, so then over that time frame, so every single month, if you're chipping away and you're following these specifics based off of what you're paying for rent or a mortgage, based off of what you're paying for your vehicle, based off of insurance, based off your utilities, then we're looking at the variables of groceries, we're looking at the variables of electricity, trying to decrease that when we're not in the house, of heating, of things like entertainment, of clothing. We start to decrease that. I would even bring in In a past video, I talked about having non-recurring assets. Okay, so having a goal of spending, the example was spending $5,000 on a lawnmower. Okay, and you go around and you try to work 20 hours extra a week to make more money cutting people's lawns. Okay, and you just work 20 hours a week extra. Now that turns into possibly $400 to $500 a week extra, and now you start to expedite that process to get to that $10,000. And I want to make this clear. These are all things that you have to do to get to that $10,000 benchmark. And there are things that you should continue to do to get to the $100,000 benchmark. But when you get past it, there's different things that you have to play around with. But at this stage, to get to $10,000, if you have a side hustle and you have that non-recurring purchase, you have that asset, you now have that extra income. Okay, and if you use the example of lowering your heating bills by having a wood stove or having something that's more efficient, or at least just turning the heat down when you're outside of the house, or turning the air conditioner off depending upon a certain heat degree, now things become easier to manage. And then what ends up happening is that you can take that savings from $500 to $750 a month. Now you can increase that to $1,000 or $1,250 a month. Or if you have that extra income, now it's $1,500 a month. And what ends up happening is now, instead of saving it over 20 months, which is still great, if you can save 10 grand in 20 months, that's great. You've accomplished something awesome. But now you can decrease that to 10 months or to even 7 months, simply by being a little bit more aggressive with those different aspects and those different decisions. Okay, and so what it comes back to is you've got higher income than expenses, and the scale changes based off of how aggressive you want to be, and the scale can change further based off of how quickly you want to get to those points. Okay, so the big takeaway here is follow these specific numbers. If you're looking at, you have your fixed costs, you have your variable costs, you try to have that in very specific ranges. Okay, you're making 60 to 80K a month, and so you're looking at, how can I keep my mortgage around $1,000 a month or lower? Okay, and mortgage or rent, right? We're looking at, if my car payment is $250 or below, if $300 or below, but ideally $250. If I'm looking at my insurance and my utilities around $150 each and every single month. And then when we're looking at the variable stuff, we got groceries. Groceries should be $300 to $400, and you're only buying Whole Foods. You don't eat out for 3 months. Make that commitment to yourself. It's not as hard as you think. You can do it. Okay, so 3 months, no dining out. There's no entertainment. You don't get to go out and drink. You can do that. Okay, you can genuinely do that. And then when we're looking at gas, you say, okay, if I want to drive around or something, I give myself $100 a month of gas money. Now that enables you to work within these confined restrictions. And then if you want something, the only way that you can get something else is you have to have a side hustle. And when you have a side hustle, that's when you can start pushing a little bit further to get to that next benchmark. Okay, and that next benchmark would be working towards that $100,000. So take these specifics, apply these today, deploy them. It's not as hard as it seems, and you're able to get to that $10,000 mark. Peace.